Okay, good evening, everybody. For some of you, it might be good morning. This week is Monday night Parsha. So this week's Parsha is the Parsha of Kisavai. Now it's a relatively long Parsha, but most of the Parsha is actually what's called the Teichacha, which seemingly are the curses. But we're not getting into that tonight. But the beginning of the Parsha, I'm going to read a few psukim, and then we'll discuss it because then we can understand what's going on. The pasuk speaks about what the mitzvah of bikurim. The mitzvah of when you come into Eretz Yisrael, the pasuk says you should take from the fruits that Eretz Yisrael was praised with. You bring the first of the fruits, you put it into a basket, you bring it to a place that Hashem wants you to go to. You bring it to the Kohen. The Kohen takes it, and you thank God for all the goodness and kindness that He did for us. It's called the mitzvah of bikurim. Okay, bikurim basically is the first thing that a Jew brings in all the tithings and everything. So they bring bikurim first. Now the pasuk says, "V'haya kisavei alaris." This will be when you come to the land where Hashem is giving you. There's an argument. There's two opinions in the Gemara. When were the Jews obligated to bring the first new fruits? One opinion says, and just to preface it, it took the Jews 7 years to conquer the land, 7 years to divide the land. Okay? So one opinion says, and we'll see that later, not now, that the mitzvah bikurim was after all the Jewish people were settled. That means after 14 years, that's when they became obligated in the mitzvah of bikurim. That means even if you got your field right away, you did not have to bring bikurim until all the Jews the whole land was captured and the whole land was divided. Now you have also another opinion that says no, a person got his field even before the 14 years. They got the new fruits. They have to bring bikurim. They have to bring it to the Kohen, to the Beis Hamikdash, and so on. But there's a very interesting Hayom Yom for Chai Elul, which Chai Elul is the birthday, as we know, of the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. And the Rebbe in Hayom Yom of 18th of Elul brings down an outline of a Torah. The Baal Shem Tov, after he passed away, came to the Rebbe Rashab and told him this Torah. Okay, it was Shabbos Chai Elul, Parshas Kisavai, after Kabbalah Shabbos. Okay, and the Baal Shem Tov said the following. You can, if you have an Hayom Yom, you can look it up. It's on the 18th day of Elul. He quotes this pasuk. And he says, it will be when you come into the land, Eretz, Kisavei ala Eretz, that the eternal your God gives you as an inheritance. You will inherit it and dwell in it. Okay? So the Baal Shem Tov said like this. The Medrash says that the word Eretz, Kisavei ala Eretz, Eretz means the land, Eretz Yisrael, but it's also an idiom of the word merutza, running. Rotz, the root of Eretz is rotz, which means to run. And it also is the word rotzain, to desire. Okay, so you have the word Eretz, the Baal Shem Tov quoted the Medrash, means running and desire. Okay, now he says, when you attain the level of rotzing, desire, you should know, the pasuk says, Kisavei ala Eretz. The pasuk said that God gives you, which means that is a gift from above, an inheritance for every one of Israel. Okay, so the Baal Shem Tov said like this: V'haya kisavei ala Eretz, asher Hashem elokecha noisin lecha. When you will come to the level of Eretz, meaning you'll have the desire to run to godliness, and you'll have the will to come closer to Hashem that every Jew possesses, then your Aveda, you should know this is Asher Hashem Elokecha Neisela. This is what God gives you. Then what does the pasuk continue? The pasuk says, "V'yashavta." You should live in that. You should dwell in it, meaning to internalize all that you have attained, bringing it down in a settled manner. Okay, so the first part of the Baal Shem Tov story, and I'm going to explain the whole thing and bring it down to earth. The Baal Shem Tov says that V'haya kisavi ala aretz will be when you come to the level of aretz. Okay, when you will come to the level of aretz means you get within yourself this desire to run to Hashem. You get the will that you want a godliness. And this is given, that God is giving to every single Jew. Every single Jew has this level of ratzain, of wanting to run to godliness and want godliness. But the Torah says, what must you do with it? You should dwell in it, meaning bring it down in a settled manner, okay, meaning internalize it. Internalize this desire and will that God gives us as a gift. Because if you don't internalize it, it's going to leave. And then the pasuk says, "V'lakachta," you should take from the first fruits. And what should you do with it? The Baal Shem Tov, the pasuk says, place it in a basket. You take the fruits, okay, put it into a basket. Now, what does it mean, placing in the basket? The Baal Shem Tov said, draw down the spiritual lights into appropriate vessels. Okay? God is giving you this revelation from above. God is giving everybody the desire and the ability to run to God, to want godliness. That's the neshama, right? It only wants godliness. And the pasuk said, the Yashavta, you should internalize it. Not only should you internalize it, but samta batena, you should put it into the appropriate vessels. And I'll explain later what that means. And then the pasuk says, v'halachta el hamokim, you should go to the place, okay, asher yivchar Hashem elokecha, that God chose to rest His name there. So the Baal Shem Tov said, what does it mean you should go to the place the eternal your God will choose? And listen to this. A Jew must know that when he goes from one place to another, he is not going on his own, but is being directed from above. It's Hashem is guiding us in the roads. And the intention is, what is the purpose of God leading you to a certain place? L'shaken shmoi sham, to rest godliness there. Okay? So what is the Baal Shem Tov saying? And then there's another table, but I want to discuss this one, what the Baal Shem Tov is saying. The Baal Shem Tov is saying the following. Hashem is telling the Jew, you should know that every Jew has a gift from above. What is this gift from above? Oretz, Rotz, and Rotzein, meaning you have the desire to run to godliness, you have the desire to want godliness, and you should know that this is not something you deserved on your own, not something that we worked for it, and therefore we think maybe if we didn't work for it, we didn't get it. The pasuk says, "Asher Hashem Elokecha neisin lecha." This is a gift from above, meaning every single person has this gift. That's from God's perspective. You'll come into the will that God is giving you. Okay, now what must you do with it? The pasuk said, "V'yashavta," you should dwell in it. Meaning, Shiva means like v'yashavta, you will dwell. Okay, or Yishuv is Yashvus, which means the same root as Yishuv, which means you should dwell in it, and you should put it into appropriate basket. Meaning, if it's business, bring that godliness into the business. If it's into learning, bring it into learning. If it's raising kids, bring it into raising kids. If it's whatever you're doing, bring it into the appropriate baskets. And then he says, what do you do with it? What do you do with this powerful, the revelation, the power that Hashem gives each one of us. What are we supposed to do with it? So the pasuk says you should go to the place that God will choose. What does it mean you go to the place God will choose? Simply means the Beis Hamikdash. Here the Baal Shem Tov is talking to every individual Jew. And he says you should know wherever you go, whenever a Jew moves from city to city, place to place, you should know that Hashem Elokecha, Sheyivchan Hashem Elokecha, God chose. There's another pasuk in Tehillim. David HaMelech says, "May Hashem mitzaded gever keinanu." From God, the footsteps of man are planned. And the Baal Shem Tov explained this as follows. And the Rebbe elaborate on this once and as follows. Tzaddikim know where their place in the world is to be. Tzaddikim know where they need to elevate, where they need to work in godliness in that place. And they go there on their own. The masses, we don't know where to go. We don't know which is my place that I need to elevate, to bring sparks of Kedusha there. I don't know. Who leads me there? Hamokem asher yivcher Hashem, the place that God chose for you to go there. Or like David HaMelech says, the footsteps of man are planned from God. Meaning as follows. Somebody ends up in a city. Why does somebody end up in a city? Either because that's where the job takes them to, their spouse takes them to, the weather takes them to, whatever. It could be a million reasons why a person ends up in a certain place. We think, I got a job in Los Angeles, so therefore I'm in Los Angeles. But there's part of the Baal Shem Tov said, no, it's just the opposite. The reason why you're in Los Angeles or Eretz Yisrael or Alaska or Arizona or wherever you, New York, wherever you may be, is because that's your place that you need to bring godliness into. How does God get you there? How does Hashem get you there? He's not going to call you up on the phone and tell you a text, go there. So Hashem makes, we get a job there, we marry there, we the weather, whatever it may be. Hashem gets a million different ways to get us in the place where we need to be. And that's what the pasuk is saying here, the Baal Shem Tov said. When you'll be given this revelation of above, of Aretz, as he said, Ratzain and Ratz, running, and the will of Hashem. You should know at Hashem, this is a gift that every single Jew has. And not only that, the pasuk says, by the way, V'irishta, it's a nachlo and a yerusha of every single Jew. What do you need to do with it? You need to dwell in it. It has to be yours. It has to be understood. It has to be internalized. And then what do you do with this godliness that you get? Because this godliness is to elevate the world that we are. But people have different functions. They could be working, they could be parents, they could be spouses, they could be whatever it may be. So the Torah says, "V'samta batena," put that revelation of the power that God gives you, put it into the various different baskets. If your basket is working, then put the godliness power in your work to bring godliness there. And then the pasuk continues. You should go to the place, not that you think you're going there on your own. That God is sending you there. Why is Hashem sending you there to that place? L'shaken shmoi sham, to rest his name there. Meaning to make godliness known into the locale where you are. That's what the Baal Shem Tov said in this Torah. What's remarkable about it, the Baal Shem Tov is saying over here that a Jew needs to know a bunch of things. What is our purpose? Our purpose, wherever we are, is to bring godliness. How do we get there? I'm going backwards now. How do we get there? Hashem sends us there. It's not me and it's not you and me deciding this is where I want to live because the housing is cheaper or the climate is nicer or whatever it may be. You should know it's because Hashem sent you to that place because that's your place. What are you supposed to do in that place? Take all this powerful godliness that Hashem gave each one of us. We have it as an inheritance. We need to put it into baskets, meaning we need to internalize this power of godliness and function and fulfill the mission that each one of us have. And therefore, it's interesting. You can be here sometimes now, and then sometimes you go to a different place, and sometimes you go to a different place. Any place where you are at that moment is to bring godliness into that place. Even if you're there for a day. Or I'll tell you, even we spoke about this not long ago. If you're driving and you don't have Waze or Google Maps, and or pre-Google Maps, or you think you know better than Google Maps, and you make a wrong turn, and you end up, as they say in Yiddish, verblunget, you're lost. What do you think? You got lost because you got lost? No. Hashem made you go to get lost in that place. Obviously, there's a mission. What do you have to do? You're in the car, you lost 10 blocks, a mile off the way. What are you supposed to do? Bring Kedusha in that place where you are. Say Tehillim, say something of Kedusha, say some Torah. Because the fact that you're there, why did you get lost? Because Hashem wanted you to be in this particular moment at this particular time. Obviously, if a person lives in an area, that's their mission at that time. They move, obviously they have a new mission somewhere else. But this is what the Baal Shem Tov is saying. Now, we mentioned before, all the way at the beginning, there's two opinions about Bikurim. One opinion says the Jews were not obligated in Bikurim until 14 years later. After the 7 years conquering, 7 years dividing the land, after every single Jew got their piece of land in Eretz Yisrael, then you have the mitzvah of bringing Bikurim. The other opinion says, no. As soon as you get your piece of land, you have more fruit, you have to bring Bikurim. The Rebbe explains what's the difference over here. So number one, let me just explain something else simply that Chassidus explains. And the Medrash says this. What's the logic of waiting 14 years? I got my land after 7 years. We conquered the land. I got my land first. Why should I wait 7 years to bring Bikurim? Because the concept of Bikurim, and this is one of the most fundamental aspects in Yiddishkeit, is what's called Hakaras HaTov, the recognition when somebody does something good for you. Today we live in the world, when somebody does good for you, they forget it the second it happened. When they think you did something bad for them, they'll remember it forever. And Torah comes along and says just the opposite. The whole concept of Bikurim, the pasuk says, what do you say? You say to Hashem, I'm saying thanks to God that I came to the land and he gave me these fruits. And the Kohen says a whole Megillah about Lavan and the whole thing. And we came the land of milk and honey, and I'm bringing the fruits to thank Hashem. So in other places it says, the truth of the matter is, no Jew can really be happy and thankful until every single Jew is happy. You got your land, very nice, wonderful, great. You had fruits, unbelievable. But there's another Jew that didn't get their land yet. He's not going to get it for another 7 years. How can you be really happy when another Jew is not settled yet? That's the reason why, the logical reason is why you have to wait for this 14 years, 7 to conquer, 7 to divide. The other opinion says, no, you got fruits, you say thank you right away. What do you wait 7 years to say thank you? You know, that doesn't work that way. So the Rebbe says, what is the level in Ruchnius on a personal level? What are these two opinions on a day-to-day basis for every single one of Jews? Okay, I don't know if anybody in this. I mean, there's somebody here one person's married to Israel on. They're not farmers yet either. They don't own land. Okay, so what does the pasuk mean for me and you? So the Rebbe said like this: we know that by a Jew, what's the first thing a Jew says in the morning? You wake up, God, I thank you. That you am up, God forbid, I could have died, I could have gotten a non-Jewish neshama. What do we say? That's the instantaneous, immediate things. Then there's another things every day we say. We say brachas, we get ready for davening, we daven. In davening we say meidim anachnu loch, the same meida'ani. But we don't say it instantaneously the second we open our eyes. We say meidim anach, that's after the meditation of davening, after Pesukah de Zimra, meditating into the greatness of Hashem, meditating in the brachas of Shema, and the Shema, meditating into Hashem's greatness, the Shemona Esrei, meditating into the greatness of Hashem. Then we come to a different level of Meidim. Meaning, there's a level of Meidim, as soon as you come into Eretz Yisrael, you got something, you woke up, say thank you. But then there's a deeper level of things. It's not instantaneous, it's premeditated, you think, you prepare yourself for davening, you daven like a mensch, you get prepared, then you come to a much greater level of Meidim Anachnu Loch. That's after meditating. So there's an opinion that says you have to think right away, and we do that opinion, Meida Ani Lefanecha. Then there's another opinion after 7 years of conquering, which refers to the 7 middays. You're refining the 7 middays, and 7 middays, you're refining the godly 7 attributes, the animal 7 attributes. Then you come to davening, you say Meidim Anachnu. But the Rebbe connects it because the Baal Shem Tov said this, I mean, this Torah, but anyway, this is connected to Chai Elul, which is this Wednesday. Well, like we said, what is Chai Elul? Chai Elul is the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov and the birthday of the Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad movement. The Baal Shem Tov founded what was called Chassidus HaKloli, the general concept of Chassidus. The general Chassidus. The Alter Rebbe took the Baal Shem Tov's Chassidus and internalized it into Chabad, into intellect. When you understand something, you digest it, you internalize it. And the Rebbe said these two opinions of Bikurim, which are the two opinions about Meida Ani or Meida Menachnu Loch, corresponds, because Shabbos Chayelu, either it's the Shabbos before, after Chayelu, before Chayelu, and Chayelu. Many times Shabbos Kisave is Chayelu, and Shabbos itself. So the Rebbe explains these are the two opinions of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. The Baal Shem Tov was the general concept of Chassidus, bringing it in Avos Yisrael in the general aspects of Ashgacha Pratis, divine providence, and so on. And then the Alter Rebbe did the 7 years of conquering and the 7 years of dividing when it was internalized in the level of Chabad. So the Rebbe says these two things are really connected. Another interesting thing is, what's the mitzvah of Bikurim? To say thank you to Hashem. Like we said. But it's interesting. If you think about it, Everything we have is from Hashem. Okay? Everything we have from Hashem. So how much should we give Hashem percentage-wise? Think about it. If you have a lawsuit and you make whatever you make, the lawyers take about 60%. Right? And then the government taxes takes another 40%. And you're left with nothing, as everybody knows. So L'cheira, Hashem comes and says, I'm asking you to do a mitzvah called Bikurim. I want you to show recognition that I am the one that gave it to you. Not, God forbid, and I don't want to get into this because we discussed it many times, not, God forbid, God has an ego and he needs recognition, and if not, he gets insulted and he gets angry and he won't serve dinner anymore. It doesn't work like that. Hashem wants for our benefit that we should understand menschlichkeit and decency to say thank you. When parents teach a kid to say thank you, it's not that the parent needs the thank you from the kid. The parent is teaching the child that the child needs to be able to say thank you. It's not the parents have a problem with that. They need the thank you. They need to teach the child to be appreciative. So Hashem comes along with the mitzvah Bikurim. And God doesn't say, give me a lot. What does Hashem say? Listen, V'lokachta mereishis, from the first fruits. He's not even asking a quarter, a third, he's not. Give me a little bit of the fruits. And the Gemara says, how much is Bikurim? Even though biblically there's no amount. Chachamim said 1 out of 60. Okay? And the Gemara said because tena, basket, tough, nun aleph equals 60. So the Gemara says from the rabbis, they gave an amount, you give 1/60th of your fruit, which is not a lot, by the way. If you think about it, we should give God a half, quarter, 1 out of 60, and it's a very small percent, it's less than 2%. Hashem says, I don't want a lot. But what I do want is mereishis, give me from the best. You want to bring me a gift, don't give me garbage like Cain and Hevel. Hevel brought good stuff, Cain brought junk, and Hashem accepted Hevel's and not Cain, so he killed him. Hashem says, I don't want a lot. All I'm asking you is when you give me from the best. And this concept, by the way, the Rebbe fought that in schools, in Jewish schools, they should learn Limudei Kodesh, the Hebrew subjects, in the morning, not in the afternoon. Many schools have a problem with teachers, so the Hebrew teachers teach some in the morning, then they teach in the afternoon. The Rebbe was adamantly against little children learning Torah in the afternoon. Why? They're tired. They're tired, they can't function well. The beginning of the day is the best of the day. Hashem says, I'm not asking for a lot. I'm asking for a 60th. But you know what? When you give me from the best. And therefore the Gemara says this, you walk into, Rashi says, you walk into a field, when you see the fig ripening, you put a string around it, gemi, it's called gemi. You put a string around it that you should see when it ripens, this is the Bikurim one. So it says in Svarim that the word gemi, gimel, mem, yud, stands for Gedolim Ma'aseh Hashem. Great are the work of God. Gedolim, gimel, ma'aseh mem, Hashem yud kevav ke yud, Gedolim ma'aseh Hashem. Because Hashem says, all I want is a slight recognition, but don't give me your garbage. You give me the best you have. Not a lot, but what you give quality-wise, give me the best you have. Another interesting thing, in the mitzvah Bikurim, it says also, you have to tell to the Kohen, and It's later on. It's the mitzvah beer meisus. Certain time you have to get rid of the might of tithing. Every year has a different tithing. I don't want to go into it now. But it says in the pasuk, one of the things has to confess when they bring bikurim, and they have to say, "Bi'arti hakodesh min habayis." I destroyed the holy things from the house, meaning I ate it up. I did what I had to do, and fine. Okay. There's the Mefarshim say a very interesting concept. The word bi'arti begins with a base. Hakodesh, the holy, begins with a hey. Min is a mem, and habayis is a hey, which stands for the word behema, animal. And here the Mefarshim say a beautiful concept. A Jewish home is supposed to be holy. A home is holy. Sometimes a Jew destroys the kedusha of the home. Bi'arti, like bir chamet. I burnt out the kedusha from the home. In Abayis, the Jew is supposed to have kedusha in the home. Sometimes, God forbid, the Jew brings foreign things into the house. The education in the house, the lifestyle in the house, the atmosphere in the house is not a holy house. In a negative way, when a Jew is bi'arti hakodesh min habayis, if you get rid of the kedusha from your home, the pasuk says that's an acronym for a behema. Then you're not a person, you're an animal. A person is supposed to bring in the kedusha, leave it in the house instead of destroying it from the house. But this is the whole mitzvah of bikurim. Okay? Now later on, okay, just one more aspect about bikurim. Bikurim needs the concept of simcha. The Gemara learns it out from the pasuk that you have to, therefore, only with the time of simcha can you say the psukkah. I don't want to elaborate in all the dinim of bikurim; they're complicated. The mitzvah bikurim must have simcha, and the pasuk at the end of bikurim says, "The samachta b'chol hatayv." You should rejoice. The samachta. You should have simcha in all the good that Hashem does for you and your household. The mitzvah bikurim is to have simcha. We know one of the fundamental aspects in Judaism is if there was Hashem b'simcha. We have to serve God with joy. There's a pasuk later on in the cursing when Hashem is cursing the Jews. The pasuk says, you know why all these curses come upon the Jews? Tachas, because asher lo yavadatos Hashem Elokecha, you didn't serve God, b'simcha uvetuv levav, with happiness and joy. The pasuk is saying the curses are not coming because you sinned. The pasuk is saying in the Teichachan, the curses, seeming curses, are really brachas, that you are not having proper simcha. And that's the simple meaning. All the curses come upon you because you don't have simcha. You might be a great Jew, you might do all the mitzvahs, you don't have simcha, no good. The Arizal said even more, now Rebbe alludes to it in Tanya, in Perek Chavav, that we learned. The Arizal said, what does it mean? You know why the curses come? Because you don't serve God with simcha. Meirev kill when you have it good in Gashmias. When people get a new car, a new house, a new thing, they get all excited. And the Arizal said what the pasuk means is you're not serving Hashem with the same simcha of doing a mitzvah than you do when you have physical happiness. And the Baal Shem Tov said, Arizal said the Torah said that's no good. A Jew needs to have simcha when they serve Hashem. In Tanya, we learned in Perek Chavav in chapter 26, the Alter Rebbe explains because when two people fight, one will have better spirit, they might be weaker, but they'll win the war. It is totally obligatory for a Jew to have simcha. And you know, we're coming to the tshuva season. You know, Elul, Rosh Hashanah, and Kippur is called the tshuva season. Many people think, and the Rebbe said this, he excluded that they're even thinking that way. Many people think tshuva means getting depressed. I'm no good. I did sin A, B, C, 1, 2, 6, 13. I did them all. A person gets depressed and they start crying and they start getting depressed and they start whatever. The Rebbe said tshuva is one of the fundamental aspects of Torah. Tshuva is even greater than all the mitzvahs, because even if you desecrated all the mitzvahs, you could do tshuva. So tshuva is a fundamental aspect of Yiddishkeit. So if you have to have simcha by Yiddishkeit, by tshuva for sure you need to have simcha. What's the simcha by tshuva? The simcha by tshuva is not a Jew knows I sinned. Yes, I sinned. I did something terrible. But you know something? Hashem is infinite forgiveness. When I do tshuva, Hashem will definitely forgive me. And I know Hashem will forgive me. And I'm certain Hashem will forgive me. Like we learned in the laws of Rosh Hashanah. We get dressed up before Rosh Hashanah because we're certain Hashem is going to forgive us. So even the level of tshuva has to be besimcha. And it's not a contradiction. I realized what I did was wrong. And I realized I'm very far from Hashem. But I realized with one turnaround, I'm facing east. All I do is turn around, I face west. I'm on the journey already. I'm coming home. So therefore, this is what the Pasuk says in this week's, and therefore by Bikurim, which is the concept of thanking and recognizing Hashem for all the gifts He gives us, are basically our existence. So we need to have simcha. Why do we need to have simcha? We learned in the past a very simple thing. A person is finite. Hashem is infinite. How in the world can a finite person reach the infinite? The mathematical dilemma. How can somebody who's finite reach the infinite? Comes along the Torah and says, I give you an advice. I'll give you a mathematical solution to the problem. When a person is happy, I don't mean dancing crazy in a nightclub. I mean internalized happiness. When a person is happy, they break barriers. There's an expression in Chazal, Simcha paired together, Simcha breaks barriers. When a person is marrying off a child, a person is in a very happy mood, they will do things they normally won't do. They'll give more tzedakah, they'll dance like a sugar, they'll dance like a crazy person. They'll do all these things. Why? Because they broke their limitations. They're not the same stuck up, so to speak, person that they normally are. When a Jew serves Hashem with simcha, you do a mitzvah with simcha. So you're breaking your limitations of your barriers. You're going out of yourself through simcha. When you have simcha, then you go out of your barriers, you reach the infinite. Then you reach Hashem. And that's why simcha is so vital in the Avodah of Hashem, even in the level of tshuva. Even in the level of tshuva. Okay, there's another very interesting thing. It says in this the pasuk, it says, Hashem is giving you kol habracha se'ela v'hi sigucha. Hashem is giving you all these brachas, and they should reach you. Yeah. Yeah. Uba alacha at the beginning, Perek Chav Ches. Uba alacha kol habracha se'ela v'sigucha. And all these brachas will come upon you, and they will reach you. You'll get it. So the Alshich, a very holy commentator of Chumash, brings on a remarkable story. A lot of people know the story. It's a mashal, but he brings on a story. But you should know, when you hear the story, you should know it originates in the Alshich. The Alshich said the following. There was a poor tailor. He told the story. There was a poor tailor in the city. And he was barely making a living in a village somewhere. And one night he has a dream that there's a treasure of gold and silver buried underneath the gate by the king's palace. And he had this dream, a recurring dream, a few nights in a row. So Yankel, the tailor, who wasn't making it, he didn't have a living. He said, you know what? Let me go. Let me go try. He takes his broken horse and wagon, and he goes out to the king's palace, and he's making sure there's no guards around because he has to start digging by the gate of the king's palace, of the gates of the palace. And he makes sure nobody's around. It's the middle of the night, and he starts digging. While he's digging, of course, he gets caught. And the guard comes over to him and says to him, what are you doing, you fool? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? So the tailor Yankele got petrified. And he says to the guard, I'll tell you. I'll tell you the truth. I had a dream. They wanted to arrest him. He said, I had a dream that I found a treasure, that there's a treasure underneath the king's palace. And I just came to get it. So the guard says to him, you fool. I had a dream that there is a treasure underneath the oven in Yankel the tailor's house in this village. You think I'm foolish enough to go there to look for it? It's a dream. What are you hacking at China? What are you, crazy? So Yankel the tailor heard this. He right away ran back home with his broken horse and buggy, and he moved away his oven, and he found the treasure underneath the oven. That's the story of the Alshich. What's the moral of the story? He connects it to this pasuk that all the brachas will come upon you. B'sigucha. B'sigucha means they'll reach you. You'll take it. It means like this. Every Jew, like the Baal Shem Tov said, there's a pasuk in Nach that says, "Va'atem tihi yuli eretz chayfetz." Pasuk says Hashem is speaking to the Jews. You should be for me, Va'atem, you Jews, tihi yuli, you'll be for me, eretz chayfetz, a desirable land. You'll be for me a desirable land. The Baal Shem Tov says, what does it mean that the Jews are a desirable land for Hashem? And he says the following. All the precious materials, gold and silver and diamonds and all these things are deep in the ground. They're deep in the ground. They're buried in the ground. They're treasures. But when you look at the ground, all you see is mud. It's buried in there though. What you need to go is dig out the treasure that you have in your backyard, which means like this. Many times people look for meaning of life. People will look for happiness. People will look for contentment. People will look for a million different things. And they always think the grass is greener on the opposite side, on the other side. And people will start looking for treasures, for happiness, for contentment, for whatever you want to call it, all the various things. But they'll look somewhere else. The Alshich in this mashal says, why are you going to other religions? Why are you going to other things? It's in your backyard. It's buried in your neshama. Yes, it's covered with dirt. But why do you need to go somewhere else if you have your own treasure? And therefore the pasuk is saying, Uba alecha kol, this is what Alshich says. Uba alecha kol habracha sa'ela. all these brachas will come upon you. And they'll reach you. Meaning, like they say in Yiddish, why are you climbing other walls? You have it in your own backyard, in your own wall. And that's what the pasuk is saying. That the Jew needs to understand that all the brachas, everything that a Jew has, is really in your backyard. Look, dig, and you'll find it. You don't have to go anywhere else. Okay, next. In this week's Parsha also talks about a famous pasuk. The pasuk says like this: "V'ro kolami haaretz, all the nations of the world will see." One second. Anyway, the pasuk says like this: here it is. V'ro kolami haaretz, all the nations of the world will see. Ki shem Hashem nikra alecha, that the name of God is called upon you. V'yadu mimeka, and they'll be afraid of you. Okay? It says in the pasuk, Hashem promises the Jewish people that when you behave, the enemies are going to run away from you. That you won't even have to fight them; they just run away. And the pasuk says like this: "V'ro kol ami haaretz, all the nations of the world will see. Ki shem Hashem nikra alecha, that the name of God is called upon you. V'yadu mimeka, and they'll be fearful of you. They'll run away." So the Gemara says in Menachos, in Saita, it's a bunch of places. Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkin has said, what does it mean they're going to see the name of God? Nikra Lacha, it's called upon you. Where are they going to look at you and see the name of God? So he says, Elu tefillin shabarosh. These are the het tefillin. I know the men would know this. If the women ever see men davening, if you look at their het tefillin, okay, there's a shin on the sides. One shin has a regular shin. You know, a shin is 3 lines and 2 spaces in between. And one side is 4 lines with 3 spaces in between. Okay? A shin normally is 3 lines and 2 spaces in between. In the tefillin, there's one side has the shin, and the other side also has a shin, but it's 4 lines with 3 spaces. In other words, spaces are the 3 shins, the shin. And so what does it mean? What does that shin stand for? Shaddai, the name of Hashem. So the pasuk says, they're all going to see the name of God called upon you. And they're going to be afraid of you. How are they going to be afraid of you? They're going to see your tefillin. The Jews will wear tefillin. They'll be afraid of you. That's one of the main reasons, by the way, when the Yom Kippur War broke out, even before the Yom Kippur War, the Rebbe came out with a concept called Miftzah Tefillin. The Rebbe wanted people to put on tefillin. And the Rebbe said, what's the reason for that, of Jews putting on tefillin? Because of this pasuk. The Rebbe foresaw the 6-day war. And the Rebbe came out, that's when the Rebbe came out in 1967. The Rebbe came out with the concept called tefillin. Miftzah tefillin, to put tefillin as many people as possible. And the Rebbe quoted this pasuk constantly. But there's one problem with the Gemara. The pasuk says, they'll see the name of God. Rabbi Elazar Gadol says, Elu tefillin shabarosh. Literally, it means these are the tefillin in the head. Shabarosh, in the head. Nobody wears tefillin in the head. You wear tefillin al harosh, like it says in the halacha. I mean, over there, the Chumash it says bein necha, but it says tefillin you put on the hand next to the heart, And al harash, you put it on the head. Why is the Gemara's expression that this tefillin that throws fear on the nations is tefillin sheberosh, tefillin in the head? But what is a funny expression? So again, the Rebbe explains many times that tefillin you wear on the head, but that represents binding your mind and heart to Hashem. In other words, when you wear tefillin on the head, yeah, physically you don't put them inside your head. You don't make a hole in your head and put them in. But the tefillin have to permeate the head. It has to be tefillin sheberosh, the Gemara says. It has to be in the head, meaning you have to, the tefillin of the head, which is binding the mind, has to permeate the head. Meaning your thoughts and seichel and the intellect should be permeated only with the level of kedusha. Only with the level of kedusha. Another interesting thing, just going back to bikurim, I just forgot to say it before. We said before, you take the bikurim and you put it into the basket. So in Chassidus it says, bikurim represents the neshama. The basket refers to the body. The samto batena. You take the neshama, put it into the body, into the basket. Like we spoke before, you go to the place where your mission is in life and bring godliness there. So it actually refers to the neshama coming into the body. When Hashem gives you the mission, He takes the bikurim, the neshama, the first fruits of the neshama, He puts it into the ten, into the basket. But there's a very interesting mission in bikurim. You ever hear the expression, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? It's a Mishnah. It's a Mishnah in Bikurim. You know what the Mishnah says like this? The din was, and they learn it out, which doesn't matter from where. They learn it out like this. You have to put it into the basket and bring the basket to the crane. So if a guy was poor and he brought Bikurim, what type of basket did he have? You know, made out of straw. You know, a wicker basket, a cheap wicker basket. How did the rich man bring bikurim? Gold and silver utensils, right? He's a very rich man. So the Mishnah says the din is like this. When you bring the bikurim to the kohen, if it's a cheap basket, the kohen keeps it. He doesn't give it back to the poor man. If it's an expensive gold or silver, he gives it back to the rich man. Which means the poor man, not only is he giving bikurim, he's losing the basket also. So the poor man gets poorer, and meanwhile the rich man gets it back. So that's the expression, the rich man gets richer and the poor man gets poorer. It's really a mission bikurim. Okay, one more aspect I want to talk about for, well, whatever time we have left. And that is, we mentioned before that in this week's Parsha is the Teichacha. Okay, the seemingly the curses that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, we read the Teichacha twice a year. Once in Parshas B'chukaisai, okay, once in Kisavei. It says in Sfarim, the Teichacha of B'chukaisai, which is half of the curses of this week's Parsha, mamish half, we read right before Shavuos. Bamidbar, we always read before Shavuos. B'chukaisai is the last Parsha before Bamidbar. So we read the curses of the Eden, but we don't want to go straight from curses to Shavuos, so we read Bamidbar in between. But the Teichacha of the end of Vayikra and B'chukaisai is for Shavuos. The Teichacha of Kisavai, Nitzavim, is always read before Rosh Hashanah. Sometimes Nitzavim and Vayelach, but like this year, It's only Nitzavim. Vayelech we read after. But Nitzavim is always read before Rosh Hashanah. So now we have the curses in Kisavai before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then we break it off with the Parsha Nitzavim in between. What is this concept of the curses before Shavuos and before Yom Kippur? And the curses in Vayikra and B'chukai are like half the amount of the curses of Kisavai. Why? Like, what does the whole thing mean? So, okay, Chassidus explains they're really blessings, okay? But the purpose of the Teichacha is to refine the Jew, okay? Because it's supposed to influence us to do only good. So there is the preparation for Matan Torah, preparation for Shavuos, is refinement of the Teichacha of B'chukai. And then there is the refinement, the Teichacha before Yom Kippur. Shavuos is the first luchis. Yom Kippur refers to the second luchis. Very briefly, the luchis, the first luchis, the Jews were tzaddikim, came out of Egypt, newborn babies, perfect Jews, prepared 49 days, tzaddikim. Yom Kippur was after the ego. Okay? Yom Kippur's luchis is Baal Tshuva luchis. Shavuos is tzaddik luchis. Yom Kippur is Baal Tshuva luchis. Each one, Chazal tell us, you need a refinement before. You need a refinement before Shavuos to the level of tzaddikim, and you need a refinement as a Baal Tshuva to receive the second luchis on Yom Kippur. And the Rebbe explains in a Sikha, the Avodah of the Jew, when it comes from us, Tshuva, comes from within. That is a harder Avodah than revelations of godliness coming from above. God revealed himself by Pesach, revealed himself by Kriyas Yamsuf, revealed himself by Matan Torah. It was a revelation from above. When you want to do something, you want to become close to Hashem, a greater refinement is necessary. And if a greater refinement is necessary, the Teichacha of Kisavai is double the one of B'chukai. One's 48, one's 96, amount of curses. Why? Because the Avodah of Shavuos, the Jews were on a refined level already. They didn't need to be so refined. After the Egel, they're coming to Yom Kippur, they need to be more refined, the level of tshuva, which is refinement. Then you need the luchis, then you need the teichacha in double the amount, because it's a greater refinement. But the reality is, it's not for now, but there's a whole long story in the Gemara. The Gemara tells a story, Rashbi sent his son to get blessed, and he came back, he said, the rabbis cursed me, and the Rashbi showed him there were, not only when they cursed, there were fabulous brachas. All these brachas of what's called the Teichacha are concealed brachas of the highest form. We said, Alter Rebbe says in 26th chapter of Tanya, they're so great, they cannot come down in a form of good. They have to come down in a form of negativity, but it's the ultimate good. Anyway, the Mitzvah Shem Wednesday night, we will learn the dinim of Yom Kippur and discuss Chassidus of Yom Kippur, maybe also about Chai Elul. And the following week will be a Mitzvah Shem Sukkos with the Chassidus of Sukkos. And that will be it for Tishrei. After Tishrei, the class is going back to 8 o'clock.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Have a great Wednesday night. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for a wonderful evening.
Rabbi, are you still there?